see the existing shed's roof line over the truck there, and a view of the existing rear yard and shed to be removed, and a side view of that area, and a view of the rear facade. Staff concerns are that some typical construction details were not provided, including trim profiles, shingles, and brick stoop specifications. Also full door specifications, including a section detail.
Ashley, give me just a second. Can we make sure the microphone at the podium is on? And it seems really low. Thank you.
Is that new information?
Some more paper.
At this time, I'd like to invite the applicants to approach the podium and offer any additional evidence or statements in support of your application. And feel free to both give comments or
the trim details, the door specs, and the, let's see, and shingle product data, they plan to match the existing architectural shingles that are on the historic house. And here to answer any questions, and we were good with all the conditions that the staff suggested.
any other comments from you at this time?
I don't think so.
Okay. At this time, I'm going to ask if anyone is present that would wish to speak in support of the application. Seeing none, at this time, we'd like to ask if anyone is present to speak in opposition to the application. Finally, give opportunity to anyone who is present to ask questions regarding the application. Seeing none, at this time I'm going to allow fellow commissioners to ask questions if you have any.
About the application?
Yeah, sorry, about the application.
Is that all the presentation you all have?
I believe
The applicant did not submit an applicant presentation for this case,
Oh,
but they
okay.
did bring new information
Okay.
in response to staff
Oh,
concerns.
okay. So I guess the only question I have is, that's missing in the little packet here, it's just a profile section cut through the trim.
Okay,
That's the only thing I was looking for.
okay, and I can provide that.
And,
sure.
and to verify that that's part, you said it was similar to what's on the house,
Correct.
just to verify that those two things kind of match up, that's all.
This may not be important or relevant to our questions here, but how is it that the new structure is in the setback for accessory structures? Is it just because it's replacing a building that was already in the setback?
It is, and then we also did not do any windows or openings in that area, so it will be rated.
I see.
But we were just trying to give some more space to the rear yard. And
I do have one more question.
Go ahead, John.
I do have one more question, and that was the one I intended to ask before I got a little sidetracked. Have you spoken with the neighbors on either side of that setback push?
I've texted with the people immediately behind us, and they didn't raise any opposition. I was talking to them specifically about some of the trees that were overhanging.
Mhm.
So they'd indicated that they looked at the plans.
Okay.
The other, so is it the house, like, if you're looking behind the house, the one
Right.
to the right would also be,
Michael Stewart, it's the one that has
like the yellow house? I guess I was thinking the other one that's actually adjacent to the backyard. Like in that picture, the red house one on the right.
Adjacent means
Or
beside
the
or
backyard.
directly.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I haven't talked with any of the other neighbors.
Okay.
Well, I mean, notice should have been sent to them.
Agreed. The only reason I ask this question is that neighbors sometimes don't pay attention to that very well. And we've had a case here before, not one that I was a part of, but one where, because we're considering the neighborhood issues, not just the belly button aspect of you pushing a little closer to that lot line, it does have impact. That kind of move has impact on the neighbors as much as it has an impact just on your property. And so my concern is always, are they aware that that's going to happen, and do they have any kind of issue on their side that may impact, just like a tree root scenario next door may have an issue on your property. This one has that same kind of issue on their property possibly. So it's just a question that I wanted to kind of put out there, and also make sure that we consider as a commission that we need to understand we're talking about the neighborhood here and the spaces between the buildings regardless of property lines. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It does. Mostly we're surrounded by other accessory structures.
Okay.
So it's
Okay.
not like we won't be impacting trees or
Okay.
anything.
All right,
for
that's
those
helpful.
neighbors.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Curtis?
Nothing.
Jordan or Barden, any other questions?
Nothing further.
Okay. I just had the one question that I had, Ashley, was about, you did provide a Sanborn map as part of the evidence. The Sanborn map had it kind of cozied up next to where the neighboring property to the west has an outbuilding, and I've not done enough research to know whether or not that one's in its original location. But
It is, but it's a new structure.
Okay.
We actually had COA approval on that a few years ago.
okay,
There are a large row of trees going down that side of the property, both on their property and on the property that we're talking about. And so putting it on the other side seemed to be the best for the lot.
okay. Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
Nope.
Hearing no questions, we're going to close the evidentiary hearing. Discussion?
I don't see any issues with this, other than conditions remaining that the staff has suggested. I see it as not incongruous with the character of the district.
Any other comments?
No, I'm
John?
fine. I'm good.
Any additions to the conditions?
The only thing that I would like to see, well, it's already in here under staff concern number
Yeah.
1. So I
Yeah.
think that, because I brought up the trim, the profile
Yeah.
issue.
And that's 3B, 3A.
Yeah. That's it. So it's already
It's-
based on what the staff conditions are.
Okay.
I'm fine.
Is there a motion?
I'll do it if you
Okay,
want.
yeah, thank you, Curtis.
I move that based on the evidence presented in the application, plus during the public hearing, that the application to demolish a non-historic structure and construct a new outbuilding be approved with the following conditions. 1, that any new post holes be dug manually, and tree roots larger than 1-inch caliper that are encountered while digging shall receive a clean final cut using tools designed for the purpose, such as loppers. 2, that the following materials and specifications be submitted to and approved by staff prior to installation or construction. A, trim profiles and thickness. B, brick stoop pattern, or brick stoop pattern and color be submitted. C, exterior lighting specifications, if any, and D, gutter downspout locations and specifications, if any.
Thank you.
Curtis, did you intend to skip the asphalt shingle?
Yes, because we heard in testimony that it was going to match the stuff on the structure.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
For the record, I'm an aye also. A yay, rather. So this case has been approved with the conditions stated by Curtis. Thank you for your application. We appreciate your time. You're welcome to stay if you want to, or if you have another application to attend to, but you're not required to stay. The final vote of approval will be conducted at the next meeting when the minutes are approved. Staff will send you an official notification to the applicant of the adopted decision and the next steps to receive the COA placard after the next meeting. Thank you for your time, and good luck with your project. The next case we're going to hear is COA-0113-2022. It's 921 West South Street. Before we begin, I'll ask if anyone, any of the commissioners, have an interest in this matter, or otherwise feel you cannot be impartial in the fair hearing of this case. Hearing no. Okay, we're going to call up the applicants for affirmation. If Ashley's already been sworn in, do we need to swear her in again, Raz?
Just for the record, note that she's already been sworn in.
Okay. The applicant's architect has already been sworn in. I believe, are you the applicant?
I am, yes.
Okay, if you wouldn't mind approaching the podium. And do you solemnly swear, and would you tell me your name? I'm sorry.
Jacob Wibbenhorst.
Hi, Jacob. Would you mind letting us know, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we'll ask staff to make a presentation summarizing this application.
All right, as you mentioned, this is case COA 113-2022 for 921 West South Street. It is located in the Boylan Heights Historic District, which is a general HOD. The nature of the request is to construct a 2-story rear addition, removing a 1-story rear addition and deck, construct a new deck, alter front entry and stoop, and remove trees. And you can see in this map here, the property is on the corner of Stokes and West South Street. This is a view of the property from South Street. And we'll take a tour around. Here's a detail view of that front entry. And again, this is a view from the sidewalk corner at Stokes and South. And again, at that corner view, this is the view from Stokes Street, looking back at the house. And there is a rear alley behind. This is a view from the alley, looking back towards the house. And again, that same view with the fence out of the way. And this is a view from just past the corner of the property looking back down the alley towards the street. Staff concerns were some things that were not provided, including built area calculations for surrounding properties, the question of whether or not there would be a replacement tree planted for the tree that is to be removed, and the deck construction details shown in the drawing appeared to be non-traditional. And some standard material and design specifications were not provided, but are included in some typical suggested conditions. And I believe that there are new materials for you from the applicant. Is there a particular picture you would like me to leave this on? We forgot our mouse today and are navigating from afar.
I think maybe just one of the overall photos from the street? Yeah, all right. I think since it's largely on the back of the house, maybe the image, yeah, I think that's a good image. Thank you. So, Colette's providing us with some new materials from the applicant. And then we'll give the applicant a chance to speak on any additional support. Thank you. At this time, feel free to provide any additional information or support for the application.
Okay. So I just passed out more material. I'm just going to go through the potential conditions, and we're good with replacing the red cedar tree. There's a lot of trees on the property, but we can replace the red cedar tree and work with staff on the location and the caliper and all that. I also provided new elevations that showed more typical deck construction with the rails and the pickets. And let's see, what else did I put in there? Oh, and then I did the building mass to open space of the surrounding neighbors, and you can see that we fit in within the range of the block, really, even. And then I had provided in the application a large kind of figure ground map that shows just how small the house is, really, the tight footprint, and we really tried to keep the addition a tight footprint as well.
Okay. Is that everything at this time?
I think so, yes.
Okay.
And we tried really hard to work with the enormous pine tree that's in the backyard. So the deck kind of celebrates that.
Yeah. Thank you. This time, going to call on anyone present who may be wishing to speak in support of the application. Hearing none. At this time, call on anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this application. Seeing none as well. And finally, going to allow anyone present who may have questions or comments regarding this application to step forward at this time. Okay, seeing none. This time I'll allow our commissioners to raise their hand with any questions they may have. Yeah, John?
I couldn't help but see this, and I don't know if this photograph here is on the slide or not on the slides.
There's a similar one. There's a similar head-on.
Okay. Is there a way that we can?
Ashley, you can scroll with the mouse.
It's that one right there.
Straight on.
Head
Right there. There
Yeah.
we go. Right there. You state in the thing there that you didn't think that the stoop was original because it didn't align with the porch columns, but
There's
what I'm
other reasons why, too, because the structure is really just wood posts
Okay.
and kind of cobbled together. I mean, there's really no foundation, and then the stairs are also poured concrete, and yes, it doesn't align with anything, too.
Well, what I'm seeing not aligning is just the porch.
The footprint of it doesn't really align either, but I mean, we tried to stay very close to the.
Well, what it brings to my thought is that the porch is not original. The structure, the columns are not original because the stoop lines up with the door, lines up with the window above, and everything is symmetrical to that center line of the property except for the porch.
Actually, I found that when I was on site, I noticed it wasn't, and maybe you can speak to this, but it looked like the door and the window above weren't actually
They're
symmetrical
not
either.
very symmetrical.
Everything's kind of off a little bit.
A little bit. yes, but the actual porch itself is definitely
Yeah.
a good foot over.
Yeah.
And I noticed what you chose to do as a way to solve it was align the peak of the porch roof with the center of the window adjacent to it.
Correct.
Yeah, I don't know what I would have done if I were you, because everything's off just enough to make you crazy.
But what you're suggesting is you're going to take the porch off and redo it?
Yes,
The whole portico?
the whole shebang.
Okay. And align it back straight?
Correct.
Okay. All right. That's helpful. I appreciate that. But it does beg to differ to me that, because most stoops of this character are in concrete.
Well, just the steps are, but it's not, did you go look at it?
Yeah?
It's got like formwork edge lines.
Ah,
that isn't
that I did
quite-
not see because
Yes.
maybe just because I didn't look I didn't
You
go up that
look
close.
at the Sanborn maps, the side porch was
Yeah.
actually, I think, considered their front porch.
Uh-huh.
And not this.
Okay.
And so I think it's kind of evolved over time.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that. I mean, you passed that with flying colors.
We've been working on
It's
this
a
one
very,
for a while.
yeah, it's a very quirky assemblage.
Yes, it is.
It's got a lot of character.
Yeah, that's what we call it. Yeah, that's great.
Others? Questions?
I don't have a question.
Jordan, Barden? Because I can't help myself, I have a couple of questions.
Please do, Rob.
So the Sanborn maps were the only evidence, though, that showed that's your working logic for that the porch is not original.
That and just the construction details just
Okay.
aren't, they look more new than, and then I did go around and look at all the similar style houses, and most of the ones that were in Boylan Heights, well, actually almost all of them, had long front porches on the front. Now in
Not a stoop,
Oakland, we
right.
see this.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true.
And so I think it was a mismatch of,
Yeah, there's a few of this gambrel style
right.
house in Boylan Heights, but not many. And I actually thought it was a carbon copy of another one, but because you had it in the application, I realized, oh, it's actually quite a bit different.
Yeah,
There's
they're all a
different
little
number of
different.
windows. It seems like the application is going to great extent to build around an existing tree.
It's an enormous tree.
It is. I appreciate that very much. And there was mention of working with Leaf and Limb that I know is, they do have arborists on staff. I just want to make sure that they advised that doing all of this work is still preserving the tree's health and that the tree is in good health to do all this work that we're.
They were very impressed with the tree.
Okay.
And yes, they think that it is very healthy. We even gave expansion in the deck construction for it to grow further if it needs to, trunk-wise.
Okay.
But yes, and then they also gave Jake and Ryan a proposal for helping during construction and then afterwards, just to make sure that the health of the tree stays.
Okay.
I do have a question.
Go ahead.
Looking at the new side street elevation, you note the addition as coming from the edge of the Cambrel roof back to the end of the new construction. But I notice in the existing conditions, there's actually kind of a shed addition on the back of the house.
We've taken that off. That's part of the,
But,
part of the,
so in terms of your change in built mass,
it's not as big as you think it is. yes,
Right.
Because we're taking that, because the addition wasn't very well built.
Right.
And there's some ceiling height issues and some strangeness going there. And so we took that off and rebuilt back.
okay. Gotcha.
Back to the tree thing real quick. Is the deck going to be underneath? Is the water going to fall through the deck? Okay, so you're not impacting how the tree gets watered.
No.
Okay.
And we, I cleared all the drawings with leaf and limb. We actually had 3 of them looking
Okay.
at the project.
All right,
So all fingers crossed.
excellent.
I have one final question. It's just about the way at the deck, the way the steps on the rear elevation, they seem fairly tight. It seems like you've continued the addition based on, and maybe go 1 or 2 images back to where we're seeing kind of the rear of the house. Because it seems like the new 2-story addition basically picks, yeah, maybe go back 1, Ashley. I'm sorry. Yeah. Thanks. Seems like the addition attaches at the 1-story addition, basically at this street-facing elevation, and then it extends back towards the alley, and then you have a deck which roughly aligns with that. And my questions are: do the steps have to be on that side? And then is there anything you could do to give just a little bit of relief from the edge of that sort of street-facing facade? Seems like it lines up. And I understand today it projects, but the guidelines do ask for 6 inches minimum.
Don't they already do that with the addition?
Yeah, they do.
Okay. We can talk about that as commissioners.
Oh, you mean the steps go out further than the
Yeah.
footprint of the, I see, I gotcha. They do now, yes.
They do now, and they flush out with the portion that you're in the rear elevation. They do, or appear to anyway.
I think they go a little further past, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, when you're looking at I guess the closest to us at the top of the
Oh.
steps, that is maybe 4 feet or so past the edge of the house now.
So it doesn't align with the 12 inches of the
I think it still goes
inset?
past
It goes
that.
past it.
It's
I mean, if that's a game changer, we're happy to.
okay. That is just a question.
Yeah. No, I get it.
Okay. Any other questions from commissioners?
Nope.
Okay. Hearing no other questions, we'll close the evidentiary hearing at this time. Commissioners,
What's your concern?
I'm hung up, John, on the rear, just the rear elevation, just being flush with the corner board there. But it sounds
guess
like you all
I guess I'm okay
you all
with it
feel that
because
there's
it's
already relief.
Because you're setting
Okay.
back from the original house, and that's the intent of the guideline, as I understand
Yeah.
it.
That's how I read it.
Okay.
too. Yeah, and I mean, no one's going to confuse the deck as original
Yeah.
either, so.
Sure.
I think the biggest point of discussion for us is the change in footprint and the apparent side elevation mass as a whole. And for me, looking at the Sanborn maps and the tax map, I believe, which is our figure ground map, it suggests that what's proposed is consistent, was congruous with the development pattern of the rest of the neighborhood. So I don't see how the footprint itself is going to be an issue. So to me, that takes me down to the apparent mass of the addition. And I'm thinking that even a choice of a paint color could take the addition into visual background, if it was, a little darker or something than the body of the house. So all in all, I'm not seeing any incongruities here that rise to the level of stopping it.
I agree.
And just to add on there, John, the front porch, I kind of did that journey you did too, in terms of looking at it and thinking, what's wrong here?
Yeah.
But I think the solution here is actually the best solution
I
I could
agree.
imagine with keeping the
Oh,
character
yeah.
of the house.
No, when I
Yeah.
saw the solution to it, I thought, oh, either I'm crazy and that's always been aligned and very true, or she's corrected it.
Right.
Or she's corrected it.
Yep.
John doesn't need a microphone.
No, I don't need a
so-
microphone.
He's got a voice.
Unfortunately, I don't. I wish I did.
Your poor parents.
I know.
Barden, Jordan, any thoughts? Questions? Okay. Any further discussion?
I don't think so.
I don't have any. I mean, the few questions I had felt like were answered, and I'm with you all on everything else you said.
Good.
Is there a motion?
I will.
Wanna do it?
I will do it. I will
Okay.
try.
To you.
I will try. Oh, thank you.
There.
Based on the based on this evidentiary hearing and the presentation presented at today's hearing, I move that we approve this nomination with the following conditions. Number one, that the replacement tree be at least 3 inches in caliper and be a similar species, mature height, and canopy coverage as the red cedar tree being removed. Number two, that the railings and pickets on the rear deck appear to be constructed in a traditional manner and not attached to the band board. We have that in evidence with the new drawings that you have presented today. Number three, that the following be provided to the staff and accepted by staff prior to issuance of the blue Packard, that being the construction deck construction drawings, including a section. You provided a portion of that. I would suggest that we let staff determine if that is enough. Number four, that the following be provided to and accepted by staff prior to installation or construction, that the front porch step material and construction details, the schedule and manufacturer sample for paint if changing, the HVAC location and screening if changing. Number D, the gutters and downspout specifications and location. And number E, exterior lighting specifications and location, if any.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? None? Okay.
Oh,
Throw it in the pile.
I'm a yay, so passes unanimously. So we vote to approve with the conditions that John stated. Thank you for coming in. We appreciate your time, and you're welcome to stay, but the vote of approval will be conducted at the next meeting when the minutes are approved. Staff will send official notification to you of the adopted decision and the next steps to receive your placard after the next meeting. So thanks for your time and good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And again, thank you for your presentation process.
The next case will be COA-0126-2022. The address is 2307 Van Dyke Avenue.
I did not pull it up. Okay. Did you bring copies?
That's what we delivered to the office.
Oh, yeah. They all have copies of what you submitted originally.
Okay, nothing's changed.
Okay, perfect, good. Oh, good.
At this time, I'll ask if any of our committee members have an interest in the matter or otherwise feel you cannot remain impartial or fair in the hearing of this case. Hearing none, I will state that I do personally know the applicant's architect. We are friends and knew each other at NC State, where we were both in architecture school with some overlap. So welcome, Nick. We're going to swear you in. I don't feel like that will lead me to be anything other than impartial, though. And we have not spoken about the case or any other cases prior to this evening. At this time, we're going to swear you in. So, Nick, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, thank you. And are you the property owner, sir? Would you state your name for the record?
Douglas Williams.
Douglas, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, thank you. At this time, staff are going to make a short presentation summarizing key issues about this application.
Yes, this is case COA 126, 2022 for 2307 Van Dyke Avenue. It is located in the Oberlin Village Historic District, which is a general HOD. The request is to construct a new primary residence with carport, install solar panels, install driveway, construct fence, plant 2 trees, and plant foundation and screening plantings. And you can see the property here on Van Dyke. So the pictures are of the site as it is currently. The house was approved to be demolished as part of a previous COA application last year. So this is a view of the current property from Van Dyke. And just taking you a spin around the site here. This is the rear yard. A neighbor's tree had fallen across it just, I think, shortly before we did our site visit. So that unfortunately obscures some of the site. And this is a portion of the rear yard and fence that is adjacent to the property. Some of the staff concerns were a dimension site plan was not provided, nor were details about the site and topography, any potential grading. The overall height of the structure was not provided. There was also Ultrex Windows is a product that the commission has not previously seen. So details on that were a potential concern, as well as standard typical material and detail specifications like paint, samples, those kind of very typical condition items.
Okay, thank you. This time we'll allow the applicant to provide any additional evidence or statements in support of the application.
Well, I only really just wanted to quickly say, I hope it's apparent in the application that we took great care in following the guidelines. It has been very important to the owners to kind of honor the legacy of the neighborhood, and fitting into that context was important. We have no issues with any of the proposed conditions. And I've brought a sample as well of the proposed window to show that it is, in our opinion, very similar, if not identical, to the same extrusion that has been approved many times in an aluminum clad product. It is not a solid color through material like a vinyl window. It's got an applied finish. And like I said, the shape, the profile and the extrusion is very similar to aluminum clad windows that are approved regularly.
Thank you.
Any other comments, Nick?
No, I do have some numbers too if you guys have questions about the height.
Okay.
I think you'll see the massing kind of steps back, and so I can give you numbers for the porch and the smaller mass in the front and the overall height. If you want me to do that now, or if it's part of questions, that's either way.
Yeah, we'll wait for the questions portion.
Yep.
This time, I'm going to ask anyone present who may be wishing to speak in support of this application to step forward. Seeing none. This time, I'll call on anyone wishing to speak in opposition of the case to come forward. Seeing none. And then finally, calling on anyone with questions or wishing to make comments regarding the application to come forward. Seeing none. I'm going to ask fellow commissioners if you have questions for the applicant at this time.
Not yet.
Go ahead, Jordan, if you've got a question.
Maybe I'm just not seeing it, but have you picked a stain color for the deck?
No, not a specific color. It will be kind of in the natural range, a light brown or as close to a natural wood color as possible. That's the intent anyway.
The sample here shows 2 horizontal breaks in the window sample that you provided.
You're right. We're not proposing any grid or a pattern in any of the windows.
Okay.
That was just whatever they had.
Do you have any evidentiary information to support the concept of mullionless windows?
Not off the top of my head with addresses to refer you to. I will say there is a variety of window type in the neighborhood. I feel pretty confident that we could pull one as an example.
The one that I do see is the one with the odd-shaped window at the slope that you've shown in evidence.
The blue split level?
That's on Tower Street.
On Tower Street. Well, that is not actually, yes, that's one we were using as a kind of in the well-related, that's just outside the HOD district.
Yeah, and it's not contributing, obviously.
Right. There is another one, however, on Bedford, I think it's on the 2300 block, that has a large picture window.
Yeah.
That one.
But still broken up into, a larger window broken up into smaller sections.
What I'm seeing in the photo
Right, but
inventory is
no
everything's
kind of
1 over
internal
1.
grid.
Yeah, I
in
mean,
any
as
of those
we've
sections.
seen, pretty much the standard is 1 over 1, not a solid open gap or a solid open aperture. In addition, the windows that are in the angled slope of the roof above, again, the reference that I'm gathering that you're using is the one on Tower Street as a kind of reference to that. But again, that house is here nor there in our HOD.
Right.
And is not a contributing structure to any HOD that I'm aware of. So I'm not quite sure how that is relevant to supporting your.
Only in that it's well-related in terms of proximity to the house.
Sure.
What we're building is also not going to be
Yeah.
a contributing structure.
Unfortunately,
and then-
we're only
Sure.
limited to what our boundaries are.
Right,
And
and
what
I,
our.
what we are using as additional kind of precedent, or at least influence, are the other attic vents and false windows that we find in the kind of the dormers for the attic spaces, or some of which are kind of decorative stained glass, some of which kind of follow the roof profile in shapes other than rectangles that you find in the other houses. So I don't want to say that this is a modern interpretation of that, but we were using kind of the location and use of those accent windows as a precedent for our accent window.
Well, in each of those cases, too, that accent or special window is very much an object in the plane.
Right.
Or the field.
Right.
The windows that you're proposing are not such.
They are, well, how do you mean? In that they don't, that there's no siding, field of siding around them? Or?
That they are not objects in a bigger field. They are the.
Well, there is,
Yeah.
there is a field of siding material around them. They were actually, we had that exact same comment in the DRAC session, and they were reduced because of that.
That's what I'm not seeing. Because what I'm seeing in the drawings.
Initially, they kind of butted right up against the
It takes up
soffit
the whole gap between the bottom of the roof to the top of the, or from the bottom of the eave to the top of the other roof.
Well, let me pull up the drawings here to reference and tell you.
And in addition, and the third point, a question I've got about this is some of the proportions of the windows that you do have in the design are very horizontal in nature versus being more of a vertical proportion, which is common in the district. You do reference certain elements or certain windows in other places, but like on page 11 of the windows and doors on 2303 Van Dyke Avenue, you're showing that there's the two windows on the right-hand side, which are covered over by the
awnings, right?
awnings, are actually horizontal windows, when in reality, they are more vertical than that, because the awning is
They're hidden
covering
behind
over the
there.
top of them.
Okay.
So, again, that's a little misleading to understand. And every other, and again, the specialty windows, yes, they're
Right.
odd, and they're horizontal sometimes. Sometimes they're decorative, sometimes they're not. But
Right.
they are anomalies that are intended to become stimulation of the plane versus the plane itself.
Right, okay. I see and acknowledge that, yeah, we may have misrepresented those two, not intentionally, certainly, but
I
the
understand.
windows right immediately next door.
Yeah.
There are other cases of more horizontally arranged windows, but more importantly, maybe the ones that we're proposing are, they're not on the front facade, they're kind of, not hidden, but they're on secondary, shall we say, elevations, or even in the back. Definitely not, part of the prominent front elevation.
Yeah. The other question I
not-
have,
And not the
I'm sorry.
typical ones that we're proposing either.
I'll shut my mouth.
No, sorry.
You had requesting a driveway here, and what is the material of that driveway?
Concrete?
Yeah. Again, the context that, as we kind of see it, is that most driveways are of gravel, that they are used as almost a separation and shared between properties versus being part of the property. Granted, there are some issues, some other anomalies within that, but driveways themselves are very, very, very uncommon in the neighborhood.
They're not the norm, that's for sure. There is another concrete driveway on, I believe that one's on the 2200 block of Bedford. There's a blue house there that is a double, single car apron, just like we're proposing, that widens into a double car wide concrete slab driveway. And that is a contributing house as well.
I'll note also that the existing site currently has a concrete driveway.
Oh, it does? Okay. This one was something I did not drive by because it was going to be torn down, so.
I notice a difference between rendering and elevations with roof overhangs, where the elevations are showing that the wall intersects rather directly with the roof, whereas the rendering seems to suggest that there's a bit of an overhang there. I assume the overhang is correct?
The rendering
I look at
is
the,
suggesting on the side walls that there is no overhang. That's probably the gutter you're seeing creating a shadow line.
okay.
There is, on the gable end, there is a slight overhang that would have an eave detail there.
And I'm looking at the north elevation rendering in the upper right-hand corner of page 23, and I see the gutter, and it looks like there's a small overhang. Just wondering if it's there or not. Which should we take as the reality?
On the gable end, yes, there is a very small overhang.
And on the side?
On the sides, it's a
flush?
piece of trim and gutter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Curtis, any other questions?
No, I think more just we need to have a conversation. I think I understand what's being proposed.
Yeah.
It looks like the height of the structure to the tallest roof is it's 29-ish feet.
It is
maybe a little
20.
less.
It's 27 feet from top of foundation to that highest peak.
Okay.
We're not proposing any, as much as to the extent possible during construction, keeping the grade topography the same, which would vary from about 8 inches at the high point off of the top of the foundation to about 20 inches at the low point. So the average, we've tried to hit right at the 28 foot 7 inches, which is the current limit of the NCOD, Greater Oberlin Village
Okay.
height limit. That was the target mark for that, and why we attempted to keep it there. It's a construction site that that grade could be plus or minus, but that's what the highest peak is. The smaller mass is at 19 feet, and the porch roof is at 10.
Okay. And then my only other question is about the proposed north elevation. I guess the foremost gable above the front door appears to have a different lap exposure than the surrounding siding. Can you just...
Yeah, that was an idea, just a design
Is it-
folly, something to kind of keep the width of that door.
Sure.
That
Sure.
gable end was a large expanse of solid wall, and just to kind of break up the
So is that-
texture a little bit.
Is that like 4 inches versus 6 inches, or?
Probably more like thinking like a 5-inch overall everywhere, and that could drop down to maybe 3-inch or so,
Okay.
smaller than the 4-inch even.
Jordan, any other questions?
I don't think so.
I got one more.
Okay, John's got a question. Go ahead.
Did I hear solar panels?
Yes.
And where are they shown?
They would probably be on one of the drafted elevations.
West elevation.
Yeah, they're
they're
showing
on
the
the-
southwest perspective.
They're on page 27 on the roof and site plan.
No, that's what I wanted, okay. back
They
there.
would be
Okay,
page
so then
21
towards
on
back.
the west elevation.
Okay.
But they're on the west
Towards the front.
slope
Oh, towards the
at
front.
the back of the
Okay,
house.
that's the front of the
So,
house.
as far away from any
To the back.
Oh, it's in the back?
Visual.
Okay.
That is towards the back,
That's
right?
towards the back,
Okay.
yes.
Towards the back, okay.
Street.
My bad.
Okay. But that would be facing, oh, okay, you've got this, which way's north?
on the plan is to the left.
They're facing west.
North is the rear, or the front, and south is to the rear.
South is to the rear of the house.
Yes. So the larger massing was intentionally pushed to the rear. We spent a lot of time kind of trying to match up with the proportion of the houses along Van Dyke there, and keeping that same proportion with the massing on the front of this one.
Okay. And then you're also changing color on the,
Changing color to it, yeah, I think, Curtis, I think you might have mentioned it as a suggestion for one of the previous
24, on page
applications. So,
24,
yeah, a
right.
darker color to kind of aid in making that larger mass feel more, recessed visually at least.
And am I seeing that where we've got multiple windows, between the windows, you've got trim proud of the windows between each window? Is that what I'm just trying to read the southeast perspective. It appears that there's additional depth there, and maybe I'm just misreading this. Maybe that's a shadow line. But it's a shadow line that just suggests a 45-degree cut. So it may just be an artifact of the rendering. What is the intent?
On the southeast, you said, rendering?
Yeah, I look at southeast perspective and northeast perspective, and there seems to be depth between.
That just might be the glass in the frame recessed in
Artifact,
the
okay.
rendering. The intention is not to have anything
yeah, I see
beyond
the same
the window
thing. I see a
frame.
bit of a space there.
Yeah.
So in reality, when you bank these windows together, they just butt up next to each other.
Correct.
Flush.
Correct.
There's no vertical
No.
separation.
No. Header would span across the
So
whole,
it
the
comes
whole
off
length.
more, so it accentuates the horizontality of the window overall opening, because there's no break there.
I suppose you could say that. I mean, the vertical break to me, especially being black, seems to be the predominant.
Yeah,
kind
well,
of
I just
feeling, but
knowing the old Frank Lloyd Wright trick where you accentuate the horizontal by making a bunch of verticals.
Right.
But it's all in the same plane, is what I see, what I'm seeing here. I just wanted to confirm that.
And the way the window sits on the wall, is your intent that the proud point of the siding is sort of flush with the face of the window?
it would probably be, typical. This sample is not shown. There'd be a nail fin on the window that we would use. So, and that, the face of the frame is probably 1 3/8 inches and 1.5 inches out from the sheathing. So, yeah, there would still
There'd
be
a
some
little shadow line there.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
But no trim necessarily.
Right.
No trim.
So, and my question about, just since we're on the windows, so you briefly, I'm not familiar with this particular product. You mentioned, I believe, some that maybe the finish is applied rather than like a
Right.
through body.
Yeah, and I only mentioned that because it was mentioned to me in the DRAC session
Yeah.
as a criteria that you guys might use to approve these. That that vinyl windows are typically not approved because of two reasons, I guess: the unsightly weld and the fact that it's not an applied finish that can be changed, which I guess is more typical of a wood window, which has an applied finish. So I guess to me it feels kind of analogous to the same logic that you use to approve, cement board siding with an applied finish. That it's a newer, contemporary material that's used for construction, but it still has that applied finish. It's a factory applied finish, but it's to
And
me,
it's
all the logic is the same for approving an aluminum clad window as with this
Sure.
product.
It's basically paintable.
It is paintable, yes.
Okay, and it's
Technically,
fiberglass, not vinyl.
Companies will tell you theirs are paintable too, but I mean,
Okay.
I said the vinyl company will tell you theirs are paintable
Oh,
too,
yeah.
but I mean, it's
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
And it's vinyl or fiberglass?
it's fiberglass.
Okay.
They call it Ultrex. That's Marvin's proprietary name, but it's fiberglass.
Got it. Okay, thanks. Any other questions?
Sorry, just one more.
All right.
In this north elevation, the two windows sort of at the evens of they have like seemingly a different color siding beneath them. Is that just an artifact, or are you planning on painting
That one is that was intentional smooth panel. It would go.
Oh, it would be a smooth panel.
below the window there.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. That's kind of what I saw in the rendering, but the lines are
yeah,
still showing up.
that one was more to kind of resolve the geometry of the rectangular window and the sloped roof next to it. And,
Okay.
but I think maybe that north elevation front rendering. I don't know, John. Maybe that might give a little bit better sense that
What
that
page is
accent
that?
window.
What page is that? 19?
Maybe that'll hopefully maybe give you some more comfort about that trapezoidal window being in a field of the siding, that showing that there is some separation between the roof overhang there.
Yes, I see that.
Any other questions from commissioners?
Yeah, one more. In the north elevation, on the two side windows on the second floor, in the elevation, there appears to be a long shadow line underneath those windows or a change in material. And I'm wondering if that is, again, another artifact, because that does not seem to appear in the renderings.
No, that's what the smooth panel siding that we would underneath the two narrow windows.
Okay, so it's a change in material?
Yeah, there is a change in material there.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was, gotcha. And it's a change in material or change in pattern?
Both.
Okay.
No, oh, sorry, actually, you're right.
Material.
Pattern. The
Pattern.
material is the same. It's
Okay.
just, it would be a smooth panel.
So it's still a
It's still a cement board But
Just not lapped, basically?
Right.
I have a question for staff.
Okay.
Given the drawings and the level of detail on the drawings, do you think you can administer this case if it's approved from these drawings?
What exactly do you mean?
Well, we keep bouncing up on different things that are questions we've had, like the smooth panel siding that isn't identified on the drawings is separate, different from the surrounding things, the roof overhangs being not necessarily clear between the two. I mean, we've got testimony that you can go back to, but I assume you don't spend a lot of time reviewing testimony. You're looking back at the drawings.
You'd be surprised. Let me. There are some facts, I believe, that note these things. I can open it so I can search quickly.
Like, I mean, it's like I would have expected in potential condition 3, if you needed some clarity on the actual siding conditions, it would have been prior to issuance of the blue placard in case something came up that was a surprise.
Yeah, so the eave and soffit details are provided as a potential condition. If there is a preference that you have as to what you would like that to look like.
No,
Okay.
not necessarily.
So if you did have a preference for something based on what has been said, please cite that as a fact to be included in the final decision.
Okay.
I can tell you, I mean, if it's appropriate for me to tell you now. The eave detail that we are going to propose is nothing that hasn't been approved before, and it's a traditional 3/4 inch fascia board with an additional 3/4 inch fascia board, a little
No,
bit narrower on it.
Actually, my concern is more that these things like, and I'm going to go back to the smooth panel siding because it just came up the last, is it's not identified on the drawings. It just shows a change of color, which you could interpret as either literally you're painting a different color there, or because there are shadows expressed on this, that something is shadowing that area, so it could be interpreted as a recess. And when I vote to approve something, I like to have drawings where there's nothing particularly uncertain about how to interpret.
Okay.
That's all. And it may be that the way, part of the problem is just the way these elevations rendered. They were rendered in what looks like in many software pieces is sketch mode, where the lines are extending beyond their terminations to suggest that it's not finalized. And that is just kind of causing me some confusion. And hence the question to staff, to make sure they feel clear on it.
You could request impose a condition that updated drawings be provided that show
Yeah.
the panel so that we are clear.
Okay.
So you can see there and there, that change in material and change in detail is not there.
Right.
So it's a
Yeah.
little bit confusing.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know how many locations there are, if it would help for me to try to provide some clarity here, or if you feel like it's
I
needs a
think-
drawing.
I think if we're going to approve it, we can approve it with conditions, just so you can get that clarity in the,
Okay.
in the
Well,
document.
get out of your way then.
I don't want to have a situation where you're kind of at
Oh,
odds with the
yeah.
city trying to figure out
Sure.
what's supposed to be
Yeah.
there. That's
Yeah.
all.
Are there any other questions from commissioners?
Not for me.
Go ahead, John.
I just want to say once again that note number 4 on staff's concerns, that Ultrex, a reinforced fiberglass. This is our first review of that.
So we need to have a chat about that.
Yes. But no other questions.
There are no other questions. We'll close the evidentiary portion of the discussion.
Well,
Oh, we can open
I
back
was
up.
gonna- If it was appropriate, there were some slides about the windows.
Okay.
And the vinyl windows
Okay.
in the district now.
I think that would be the appropriate time. We'll reopen the evidentiary portion of the discussion.
Okay. Only to say that we are well aware that this window has not been approved in a historic district before, but also to say that the Oberlin Village district, specifically more so than a Oakwood or a Boylan Heights, does have a much broader range of examples of different kinds of windows, including several houses with contributing houses, even with vinyl windows, that we're not proposing. But we do think that this, as I described earlier, is a good use of a new material that replicates a historic looking window frame, but takes advantage of kind of modern technology. And
Did you
window.
document any of the houses that are contributing that have either fiberglass or vinyl windows that help us understand the quantity by which that is not an anomaly?
I did not document total numbers of vinyl windows. There is a page that shows at least a couple examples of houses, contributing houses with vinyl windows, and maybe another one that's a steel frame window, and then some wood frame windows. But I did not document total numbers of examples with vinyl windows.
I think that's something to think about.
But we also are not, I don't think a vinyl window is appropriate for
Agreed.
for what we're trying to
What we're
say.
trying to establish here is introducing a different material into the palette of
Right.
the context.
Yeah. And I don't know, we're also not advocating that this become, on an approved menu for any historic district. I think Oberlin Village specifically, it maybe is more appropriate there, or just appropriate period, where it may still not be appropriate in other districts where they don't have them. But until I come up in front of you with a project in those districts, but yeah.
Colette, you had a
Sure,
comment?
yes. So Oberlin Village is unique compared to the other historic overlay districts in that the period of significance extends to 1970. Because of this, several years ago, there was a COA application for a house on Bedford. The house was non-contributing. It had been substantially altered, but you did approve vinyl windows in the addition because the house had vinyl windows. And that,
Based on the context.
I think, is the only similar case that has occurred in the district since its designation.
But we've
Well,
not approved
and-
anything
well-
that was new construction right off the bat with vinyl windows.
Well, just to clarify, we're talking fiberglass.
Right.
Which
this
is
in particular
different.
is
It's a
vinyl.
different material, but what I think what she's suggesting is that the approval of non-wood or aluminum-clad wood windows is,
Last month, we did see a case very recently with another Marvin fiberglass window. So we could discuss that further in the
exactly.
commission
Sure.
discussion portion, but
Absolutely.
just want to make sure we're asking the applicant any questions if we need to. Nick, if you want to present
Nope.
did you need to present anything else? Okay. This time, we'll move to close the evidentiary portion of this application. We'll move to commissioner discussion. Seems like we might have some discussion. Who would like to start? Jordan?
I mean, it seems like there maybe are a number of issues to address. I You want to start with the windows in the north elevation? So I guess the issue that I have with them is that, I mean, this, on page 2, the photo inventory is really illustrative. And what it shows me is that for, I think, all but one of the homes here, if it does have an opening in the gable end, it's actually a vent and not a window. And the ones that do have windows all occur in a dormer of some kind. So what's proposed is sort of a hybrid, seemingly, of those two things. But technically neither of them. I don't know. It seems like too much of a departure from the character of the neighborhood.
Any other, any response or?
I mean, I'm kind of with you on that. The thing that keeps hitting me is just the overall kind of visual mass of this relative to every other building except for one that isn't. And the exceptions, there are a few exceptions, but most of them, all 3 out of 4 are on Oberlin Avenue. And the context which this building sits in is a lot of one-story structures, frankly. And this is decidedly large with multiple gables. And even the proportion of the gable on the houses off of Oberlin, the only contributing structure cited in here as a justification for it is the one that's being torn down. Which kind of just, to me, emphasizes how kind of anomalous it is. I'm seeing evidence of structures with horizontal siding and vertical siding in the contributing structures here. But I'm not seeing evidence of a house with a vast quantity of types and orientations of siding. So to say that I think kind of contributing to the net style and form of this seems to me pretty incongruous with the district. So I'm having trouble getting past that. Which is not to say I don't think this is good design. That's not the question before us. I think it's actually a very nice design, interesting house design. But I'm having trouble getting to yes in my mind and the congruity because of height versus location, style, form, how the siding is used, and even a lot of window proportions. So I got a hump to get over, and I need you guys to help me. I'm going to say yes.
So would, Curtis, are you asking, I mean, I'm trying to just be proactive about working towards some resolution, but, I mean, would additional evidence of either height that was, because I agree, you pointed out Oberlin, taller structures in the district tend to be along Oberlin Road.
Yeah.
To help you if there was some documentation of contributing or otherwise in this district on the secondary streets.
The contributing structures in the picture array, relative to those that are in the listing document, most of them, almost all of them are in the picture array. So I don't think there is anything to be found, frankly.
Okay.
Therein lies the rub. Now, the fact that the district is of such a great time frame, and that there is the one sort of mid-century modernish house in the, well, no, a couple of mid-century modern houses in the district. gives me a little pause, but I think we're getting into a different different style here. And that 3.7 that says, design new buildings to be congruous with the surrounding buildings that contribute to the special character of the historic district in terms of height, form, scale, massing, proportion, architectural style, and roof shape. And that the height of new buildings should fall within 10% of well-related nearby buildings. I don't know how I get over that hump.
Does the, I know you mentioned having two single gables, Curtis, but I mean, to me, that sort of stepping of the gables does make it feel less like one of the camelback. I don't love using that phrase, but it at least like escalates the scale as it migrates towards the back, which I think, is helpful. When I first looked at the application, that's what I was thinking was resolvable, was because the distance from the beginning of the one-story portion to the two-story portion feels like it's I would call it pretty significant. It's not like, especially if you take into account the one-story, the more like flat roof that comes off the front. So, I mean, it's almost like a third of the total elevation, which that helps me feel like, at least at a pedestrian or car scale from the street, what you're picking up more of are these one-story roofs.
I don't know. I look at, the one piece of evidence that suggests that camelback is 2303 Van Dyke, and it is rather minimally elevated from the front of the building, according to the evidence. Whereas, as you point out, this is significantly elevated. And that's where I'm having some trouble. I would love to hear others' thoughts, because I just threw a whole ton of things on the table here on top of what Jordan has offered up.
I'll jump in if I can. I understand your point, and I understand your point. The issue here is, yes, it comes off as a camelback, but this is new construction, not an addition. And it doesn't, unfortunately, this book is too old to have included Oberlin neighborhood as part of the special, and kind of talk about the special character of that neighborhood, but part of the special character of that neighborhood is one-story houses. And it specifically states that as part of the character of the neighborhood.
And it's easier to deviate on Oberlin because
yes, and that makes more sense because those houses are of a grander status than the neighborhood itself. And Oberlin Road has always been the Blunt Street of Oberlin. And we have seen lots of developers come through trying to always cherry pick Turner House and the others as a means to justify the ends of going bigger and bolder. As we have said before in our hearings, the houses on Oberlin are not necessarily, and in my opinion, not the defining characters of the overall neighborhood. The overall neighborhood, those houses are, like I said, the Blunt Street of that neighborhood, meaning that they don't represent the context as a total whole. They represent a very small portion of that context.
It's if you look at the shape of the district, it's problematic.
Yeah.
Just the geometry of the district of the HOD.
I could very easily see this as a kind of 1.5 story kind of vision, because I think that there are ways to reduce the scale of that second floor so that it comes off as a 1.5 story kind of structure and reduces its height immensely. so that it fits well within the kind of one-story character of its surrounding buildings. There's that issue. Other issues I think have been brought up before. I have a specific issue with the windows that kind of Jordan brought up, but I want to be more specific in that the window character of the neighborhood is a 1/1. It is not large windows that are butted together to create a more horizontal opening. They are vertical in proportion, and they are identified as so either by separation with structure between, or they are isolated in a plane that allows them to be vertical themselves. As far as the angled window and the kind of shape at the top, again, I go back to exactly what Jordan said, and what I said earlier is that it is not a object in a field to stimulate that field. It is the field itself. Because of the size of the window and the lack of trim around it, it does not come off as an object. It comes off as part of the gap between two planes. And so to me, that I don't know that I could find, and obviously you didn't either, any example of that except one that is not in the district and is not even part of the HOD or part of the contributing structures. So I'm having a hard time even considering that as something that is relevance to this case. And then finally, what Curtis brought up about the mismatch of I guess I'm going to use something from Amadeus, which I thought I'd never say, but there's just too many notes. There's just too many notes that begin to kind of take what I think could be a very basic and simple, and I must say, I think the design itself has some real merit. It really does. I think it's overly wrought with idiosyncrasies relative to the change of plane of material and pattern and such. And I think that not enough understanding of how the windows can be translated from the original 1/1 vertical proportion to something more dynamic. I don't see the success in that yet.
John, do you think if the design, rather than having 3 bays of windows, if they were paired, and I'm trying not to design by committee, but do you think that kind of change?
It helps, but
Brings
here's
it back?
here's the issue I have, is that the way I'm going to have to shout now because I'm not going to be near a microphone.
Yep.
But the very fact that you're butting these windows together and that there's no vertical separation or pattern or any kind of shadow line that allows them to be read as vertical proportions basically creates an overall whole that is horizontal.
Mm-hmm.
And that overall whole needs to be read either as a series of vertical proportions or a vertical proportion itself.
So you're saying, since they come mold together, I think is probably the construction phrase, that they're mold together
Yeah.
as a unit, that the opening is framed as one
Correct.
horizontal
One big
open.
hole.
The rough
I would like
opening
to
is
see-
the
I would like to see the holes that the windows go in be in vertical proportions, much like the individual windows are shown as vertical proportions.
Let me ask a devil's advocate question.
Sure.
Which is, the guidelines also tell us that modern structures need to speak of their time they're in.
This has nothing to do with modernism or style. This
Okay.
has to do with proportion.
Okay. That's fair, I agree. But
Well, we don't mull windows the way that we used to because the modern technology doesn't require that.
yeah.
I mean, we can. Obviously, it would be, more congruous with this particular application, but, if we're just talking about modern problems requiring modern solutions, we don't have that additional vertical element because, we figured out some stuff in the last half a century.
Yeah, and again, that does not speak to, in my opinion, proportion of context.
Let me try to help here just a little bit. I mean, I do think that the project has some locations. Ironically, I mean, on the back, there's a grouping of two windows that to me feel much more in this vertical proportion, and
Agreed.
so
Agreed.
next to the right of the porch,
Agreed.
and then even on the front elevation, there's two narrow windows which start to have a vertical shape to them or exposure, and so I don't know. I feel like we need to give some sort of constructive feedback that's at least pointing in a direction of what is success. Because I do think there are successful applications on this project that are close to meeting the criticisms that we're providing or critique. So
Yeah,
I agree.
all right, talk me down from this. That when the framing is done for the house, that the openings for the windows are in vertical proportion.
you're wanting to see vertical openings, and I'm just doing a squint test and providing or thinking about where there are verticals. And I would say in this rear elevation, there's a grouping of two verticals that are actually like 4 units
Yeah,
that do look like
Agreed.
closer to a 1/1.
Agreed.
I mean,
agreed.
they're like more of a modern take, and the
Agreed.
groupings of 2 do make it feel like that. At a squint test, that would have one band around it that creates sort of the opening as a whole. It would be a vertical rectangle.
Agreed. What I was trying to get at was trying to give a very simple, clear-cut kind of definition to what I'm trying to express without getting into the specifics of this one works, that one doesn't, this one works, that one doesn't, this one works, that one doesn't. I was trying to give him some sense of what would work across the board so he doesn't have to kind of debate back and forth, does this work or not work in our heads?
Verticality over horizontality.
Correct.
I mean,
Thank you.
fundamentally seems to be the.
Yes.
And I think the choice of window, because its face is planar and has no shadow lines, is forcing the adjacent windows to work together more, to look horizontal than if it was a different choice of actual window. Even.
Correct. I mean, that's part of my problem is the choice of the window because it's so flat.
Yeah.
So just plain devil's advocate on maybe staff's behalf, we did last month, and John, you may have not been here. Were you here when we looked at the fiberglass windows?
Yes.
Because they were on, in the back of this, there is a lot of product data, and there is a portion where there's several models on a single spread. And we did on another project approve Elevate, which is the one next to it. And I feel like again, we're not trying to design by committee, but it was, I believe the difference was it was wood on the interior side rather than fiberglass. I also I feel like the unit itself was not mitered, but maybe butted, which was more like a little bit more like an aluminum
Right.
/ just a wood.
Yeah, the miter might be part of the whole thing here.
It is.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying that because we've at least we reached a conclusion on that case,
Which is good precedent. Yeah.
which was another technically a new construction, right? It's a
New material, yeah.
so
Yes, it was entirely new construction.
okay. Thank you.
To the point about the window opening, I'd just like to remind you that the window opening will not be seen.
Yeah.
No, but it drives the net
That may be
result.
true, but
Yeah.
you're not reviewing the window opening. You're reviewing the windows.
Well, we're
Good
only
point.
talking about that relative to when the finished
Yeah.
construction is done.
I'm sorry, Colette. I feel like I shouldn't have introduced the like rough opening phrase, but I think that, with the historic compatibility, it's really about, if you look at any of the precedents in the district, the units are typically more times than not, they're vertical than horizontal. And, I think this project especially has a lot of vertical units, but when they're mulled together, it looks like the overall opening, like what you see is just a horizontal swath of glass because it's relatively minimally framed.
And that has to do with the choice of window more than it does with the framing, I guess, of the opening,
Right.
for lack of a better term, because the choice of the window accentuates the horizontality of the opening.
Yeah. I agree. And that would be incongruous.
That would be incongruous.
The other thing I'm appreciating here as we're talking is the front end, the three gable front elevation. I'm wondering if what is feeling so incongruous to me about it is actually not the fact that there are three gables, but the fact that the lower two gables have the same roof pitch and the highest one has a different roof pitch, creating a sort of a trapezoidal form between the middle and the high, which is not something we
good
see in
point.
any of the examples.
True. Very good point. Thank you for bringing that up. That's good.
Sure.
Yeah, that's true.
Though it sounds, again, we're not designing,
Right.
but it seems like maybe the NCOD maximum height, and even with the average grade plane, may be unfavorable to replicating those lower gables.
I believe that is true.
And I don't know that we would want to necessarily suggest the upper gable on the lower two.
Right.
It's too, it's like.
Well,
it's
actually,
like-
the upper gable on the lower two, weirdly enough, and again, trying to avoid design by committee, but there's actually more precedent for that in what we're looking at here than the lower gable on the upper one. But I think that's neither here nor there, frankly.
Well, I think that by reducing the scale to 1.5 stories, there are other ways to achieve a second floor with this house rather than popping up a high gable.
That's true. That's true. I mean, we've seen tricks where there were kind of faux dormers put in there and things like that that
Saddlebags.
help
Saddles,
read.
Yeah.
In terms of the multiple design moves going on here, I believe when we looked at the case on Elm Street in Oakwood with the new construction, that was one where we got them to calm down the number of design moves going on to be a little more, yet we still kept a lot of very contemporary pattern language.
Yeah. I have no problem with the pattern language.
Yeah.
I
Now
have
that-
no problem whatsoever.
And let me just acknowledge that the Elm Street house is not in this historic district, but it's an example of trying to find a modern pattern language in a historic context that worked.
Yeah. And I appreciate, I mean, you put a lot of thought, he's put a lot of thought into this. A lot of thought. And I think it would be a wonderful house on a different lot, in a different location. Unfortunately, it's
In a historic district.
in a historic district.
This historic
In in this specific historic district. And I can't just say yay to this based on that I kind of like it.
So,
Is that a motion or?
I mean, we're now coming down to a situation where we're going to have a motion.
Sorry, can I just, is there,
We're gonna-
I know the process is, evidence is closed, but is there, I know in the past it's been reopened if I feel like there's a,
Yeah.
I have some responses to some
Yeah,
things I've
yeah,
heard.
give us just a minute, Nick. And also Raz, I think, has a few comments to add.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I thought a couple of comments on the legal framework for your decision tonight
Yep.
might be worth making. You all are very aware of this, but I think just to put it in the record and as a reminder, the overarching issue in the case, the only issue in the case, legal issue in the case, is whether the proposed improvements overall are congruous or not with the special character of the historic district. You all have particularly been looking at two guidelines, 3.8, excuse me, 3.3.7, 3.3.9. 3.3.7 talks about the building itself, and there is language in that guideline with respect to it being congruous with the surrounding buildings,
Well
not the
related
district, but
nearby.
surrounding buildings. And point 9 talks about the windows being compatible with the surrounding buildings. Those are guidelines, not rules, but they are bearing more specifically on the question of windows and structures, and they have this standard of compatibility or congruity with surrounding buildings. I just want to make it clear that those two guidelines don't supersede the legal issue in the case, which is congruity in the special, with the special character of the district as a whole. I think it's probably, if you're looking at these two categories, there's two steps. One is if you have problems with either of these two guidelines, harmony, compatibility, satisfaction of these two guidelines, you might feel that there's a problem, but the problem needs to be of such a nature and degree that you can make the next step, which is to say that, and it's of such significance as to cause you to feel that there's not congruity that's been shown with the district as a whole. Not to complicate it, but there's some recent case law, and it's very important to make sure that the contextual standard is the district at large, not just surrounding buildings, even though that's what the guidelines say.
Agreed.
You need to look, the ultimate issue has to be resolved in the context of the entire district
Well,
and the special character of the district.
And I suppose to clarify for the record, while we were looking at all of these specific items here, it is the aggregate of them that I think makes it be incongruous with the character of the district. It's not any one of them, it's the aggregate.
And if I may, the second point I wanted to just emphasize was that the legal standard is whether the applicant has presented substantial competent material evidence which would tend to show congruity with the special character of the district. And as has been mentioned in training, the standard is production, not proof, but production or the evidence. Do you feel that that evidentiary standard has been met or not? And there's no opposition evidence. So you need to focus on exactly what you've heard, and not any substantive considerations that might have come out in your deliberation. You've got to really key in on just the material, visual, testimony, and otherwise that you've received as evidence in this case.
Well, as I spoke earlier, asking to have
Thank you,
evidence.
Raz. Yep. Go ahead.
Asking to have evidence for specific window style. That is part of what I am bringing to the table as lack of evidence.
Understood.
And similarly, I haven't seen evidence of any structure within the district with three gable ends forming the front elevation, or it looks like 6 or 7 material types on a single elevation.
Correct.
Material types or applications on a single elevation. So we haven't seen those.
I haven't seen evidence relative to the horizontality versus verticality of windows.
Nope.
If there are not objections, I'm gonna reopen the evidentiary portion of the hearing so the applicant can respond.
Okay. I guess there's a lot to unpack there.
It's a lot, yeah.
I will try to be as succinct as I can. Relative to the district and the area that we're using to find precedent, it's been acknowledged and told and advised by the staff even that this district is so irregular and the shape of it is such that a 1.5 block radius is not really feasible to look at without crossing over or out of the district. It is so small that the sample size is so small that using the entire district is, Colette, you can correct me if I'm wrong, acceptable. But be that as may, I also know that there is a preference not to see. I think you used the word cherry picking, And we were not just simply cherry picking the large estate houses along Oberlin. I think you've acknowledged that the house, the contributing house immediately next door does have a 2-story addition on the rear. Yes, it's true that it is hidden some more, but we did, if you know, looking at some of the renderings, we went through a lot of effort to show evidence that from the street view, our second-story massing will be similarly hidden. Not exactly hidden, but I think that's also another important thing, that language of, is, in your opinion, congruous. It doesn't say the design has to, have exact elements that are found as a menu item selection list. And we went through a great effort to, assuming that the greater NCOD 28 feet 7 inches was kind of an established height limit for the greater district. That was kind of the target. That also does explain why the roof pitch on the second story does change. We have, I admit there's probably not great evidence in this package to show. We have gone through a few different things to try to mitigate that stepping of the 2 gables in the front. Those 2 roofs are framed on top of the ceiling structure, so that kind of effectively bringing that mass up an additional foot, whereas the second-story roof framing is dropped down below the ceiling rafters. So we kind of, between those 2 moves, we effectively kind of reduced about 2 feet of mass on that back structure. In addition to the contributing house next door, there is also another one on the side street on Bedford that is a 2-story house, so we use as precedent to show, to be able to use a 2-story. Massing on this house, we showed plenty of evidence, I think, to show that the built area and site development ratios are in line with what you find throughout, not just on Oberlin. In fact, a lot of the lots on Oberlin are so big that those proportions don't even match, so we are actually more closely aligned to the interior streets in terms of built mass. There are, in addition to those front-facing gables, there are, and which is also shown in our evidence, on Roberts Street specifically, there are a few that show the double gable front-facing massing. Let me see, jumping to the windows, I guess, again, referencing, I know, putting aside those, the 2 on the house next door that are under, the 2 individual ones under the awnings that were mistakenly misrepresented, the larger grouping of windows on that same house is more in line to what we're showing with a large window flanked by 2 other vertical ones, where the total opening is probably more similar to what we're showing, again, immediately next door. There are others, including the split level, or it's actually a 2-story building built in the 70s that has that kind of almost, I don't know, Mondrian-esque arrangement of windows with no breaks, no 1/1, mold together in a pattern that creates not an opening that's not vertical. So I think there's evidence there, and there are other examples I guess I can provide as testimony. I don't have images of more horizontally. When looking at the whole window opening, it's more horizontally oriented. It is true, yes, that there are more examples of the 1/1 style, but there are certainly other examples that don't use that 1/1 style. To the points about the trapezoidal shaped window that we have up at, I certainly understand the argument that it doesn't appear as a window in a field. Personally, I think we've made an effort to show that it is a window in a field. Again, going back to the comments I just heard about well-related, I can't remember the exact language, about houses nearby, not just the contributing houses in the district. I think there has been, I know from my own experience, examples of submissions that have used non-contributing structures just outside of the boundaries of the historic district with material examples as a precedent to justify the use of that material in the new design. In terms of the number of materials in our palette, There really is only, there are two, cement board siding and wood siding. In terms of the texture and patterns, I guess there's the third one added there, or potentially a fourth one with the smaller spacing of the horizontal above the front door, and then the smooth panel accents below the two narrow windows on that front elevation, but those are, both just accent examples. The vast majority of the house is horizontal lap siding, with a smaller section of vertical wood siding, and then those two very small accent pieces of a different texture of the same material. So in terms of the palette of actual materials, there are only two. I think I covered everything else. There was some point mentioned about the special character of the district and how it is described in the narrative. One of the, some of the language there does talk about the variety of different structures. It also talks about it being a vernacular neighborhood where the houses are built by people in a various range of, well, this language isn't specifically in there, but essentially the homes, the size, the quality, it varies. I think the argument can be made that it's a representation of the owners that were building them at that time and the means that they had and the needs that they had, which is exactly what we're doing here, fitting into that same context. We have a family of four that has the means to build a new house in this district, and has been very dedicated and intentional about making that house fit in with what is there, both in terms of the story of how it's built and the design. And I understand some of the points that have been brought up. I don't agree necessarily with all of them. I hope you will see, as was just mentioned, in totality, that this is not a replica of pieces and components that are found in the neighborhood. This is a new house that is looking at all of those pieces and components and creating something that we strongly believe is appropriate, is congruous, does fit in. And I think that's all.
All right.
As far as the windows go, I think too, it sounds like there may be some other points to discuss before an approval could be given. But if it really does come down to the window shapes, we can put stud pockets between the windows, and if that is a hurdle. I think I've covered everything, unless there was something maybe that any of you guys still had questions about that. Well, I guess my window is open.
Any other questions for the applicant at this time? From the commissioners? Okay. Okay. I'm going to motion to close the evidentiary hearing.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you.
I mean, I appreciate what I've heard, but I don't see substantial evidence of the triple gable form with the roof pitches. I see in the packet the justification for the camelback orientation picture view from the street basically doesn't expose the gables, but the eye-level view in the renderings does expose them as prominent. I do not see substantial evidence to support the window proportion, the fenestration in general. I don't see substantial evidence to show the use of so many materials in so many different ways within one facade. I see at most 3 materials in a single orientation in each material in the evidence. I would really love to see a figure ground showing lot coverage of this proposed house versus the contributing structures in the neighborhood. The statistical things show that this is on the very large side, and I just want to see that it is actually congruous with the rest. And I'd love to see some evidence of two-story houses with prominent second floors outside of the Overland Road area, which is on the edge of the district. It's a very specific relationship with the district where that exists, and we don't see that. And then on top of that, I want to see elevations that clearly tell us what material is where and where those materials end. And we don't see that in these drawings currently. We see drawings with siding overlapping windows and doing, impossible things other than graphics. So that could lead to a problem in administering the contract, or not the contract, the certificate of appropriateness. We want to know what we're approving exactly.
Yeah. And I just want to say for the record, I don't think that we want to push for like false window pockets just for the sake of them. I mean, I
No.
think there's other ways you can achieve
Oh, of
verticality,
course. Of
but I think
course. Absolutely.
alternatively, a revised application could demonstrate that there are more horizontal windows in the district, or horizontal openings than maybe we have
That are
been led
contributing.
to believe.
And I'd like to suggest what we do is we move to table this for additional evidence in support of the application so that we can find a way to say yes.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Because I want something that is modern and expressive in the
Absolutely.
neighborhood.
Any other comments? I think we're close to a motion.
Yeah, I think we're getting there. I think the size and the mass, at least on paper, are certainly within the guidelines. It could just be the arrangement of that mass that feels odd. But earlier I did hear something that I thought was interesting, that it's not an addition, it's not an existing house with an addition, although to my eye it does sort of appear that way, especially considering that large mass in the back is painted a different color. Sort of gives you the idea maybe that the single-story bit in the front was there first and the big part in the back was added on, and I wonder if that were true, we would feel the same way about it, but maybe that's neither here nor there. I don't think this looks like any other house in the district, and I don't think it should or could per se. I'm not convinced that if you built any of the houses on this piece of paper in front of me, they would look like they do right now.
Right.
So I can't really hold that against the applicant.
Yeah, so, I mean, in an effort to be constructive, what do we think about the argument that the matrix of, other properties in the district is fairly eclectic?
Agreed.
I mean,
But there are consistencies among those.
Okay.
Even though there are of a wide variety of, it's kind of like trees. There are a million different trees, but they're all trees. And they all have limbs and they all have leaves. In this scenario, which is, I think, where Curtis is going here, is he is asking for evidence to show us what is the consistency about the neighborhood that regardless of its eclecticism, what are those common elements that bring this, that are the basis for all of them to spring from? And there are elements that are consistent across every single house here.
So
Rob,
yes, pardon.
yeah, I've been silent and let the experts hash this out, but, and I would support any motion to table this to get us to yes, but otherwise, I would vote to support this, because if I go 2 houses down, it's outside of the historic overlay district. And as I look at the neighborhood conservation district, which has a much more contiguous boundary, the irregular shape, and I know that's not what we're here to discuss at all, but That's just something I observed through this conversation.
Yep. It is on a little bit of a peninsula,
Right.
of the district, but with that said, it is in the district, and that's what we're here to,
Exactly.
evaluate it
And
based on.
that's a
But
different application to basically remove it from the district.
Right. So I would support a motion to get us to yes, for the applicant to answer those questions.
the one thing I just want to, move forward on a little bit, John, with what you were saying. I mean, the application does include a large number of, distinct elements throughout the district that the applicant's planning to utilize. And I feel like there's already been an effort to do that. So
I think the effort has been to not analyze those elements, but to show them as similar. And what I'm asking for is analysis, which is different than pictures.
like in quantitative, or I'm trying, because again, I want to, if we want to work towards yes, but it may need more work, that would mean a likely deferral.
Yes.
So,
And that's what I'm.
so I want to be able to give constructive feedback that they're able to be successful with any revised materials, because to me, I feel like it's less far from incongruous than maybe you all do. But I feel like I also see ways that it could get there. But I want to make sure we don't want to necessarily get an application that has more like unique elements identified to justify more unique elements. To me, it seems like we almost want to have fewer unique elements identified, but those to be more, I would say, consistent, maybe, rather than so many individually unique elements.
That, and I think especially the front elevation, a design that reads less tall. Doesn't have to be less tall. It just has to read less tall.
Okay.
And so that is a design revision. That's not just justification.
Curtis, you also mentioned so many materials, but the applicant did point out there's really two.
No.
So you're considering the various treatments
But
of.
it's also, I mean, if you look at the elevation, there's brick, there's lapped cement board, flat cement
Mm-hmm.
board, steel columns, vertical wood stain, metal fascia, and treated wood. There's a lot of different materials.
Yeah, okay.
And that's on the
I
front
want to make sure
elevation.
I was hearing that,
Yeah.
not just hearing profile changes. So, because it sounded like earlier, I think you're feeling okay about the changes in profile of the same material to a certain extent, but
I don't know. I mean, it's
a lot.
When I look at the front elevation, the forwardmost surface of the house, I think that reads without an issue, except perhaps I don't want to use the word gratuitous, but the change in siding running up from the door in that one plane.
Mm-hmm.
But if that's the only thing that's a change, who cares? The next gable back with the vertical siding works with the first gable, but then we introduce a whole other geometry and use of the siding material on the third gable back, which is just, if I subtracted that third gable back, I'm pretty sure it would be almost an immediate yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's the third gable back that seems to take me off the rails here.
I agree.
Okay.
I agree. And again, it's, for me to be more specific than to say, and to go back to my metaphor of trees, all trees have this. For me to be more specific than that, I think I'm getting into telling you how to do it.
We don't want to go there.
And I don't want to go there. So my preference would be that we let the applicant take what he's heard today, digest it, and come back. That's my,
Sounds close to a motion, John.
Sure does.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we defer this application so that the applicant can digest the comments that we have made today and come back to us with alterations that might get us to an understanding of being able to approve this without any problem whatsoever.
May I second
Or,
and
yeah.
offer a proposed amendment?
Please. I probably said that wrong.
In addition to what John has asked for, just that the applicant come back with additional evidence to support if some of the moves we've discussed today continue to support those elements, and refined elevations that more clearly demonstrate what is intended in terms of the work.
Great.
And for that matter, the figure ground drawing on the district that gives us a sense of this house versus the rest of the district to demonstrate its congruity with the placement on the lot and the lot coverage and everything else relative to the contributing structures in the district.
I accept those friendly amendments.
And that was a really
Do we-
lengthy motion, right?
Do we need to repeat that motion in some form? Or do you have any advice for that? I mean, since it's a deferral.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's customary just to have a deferral for two reasons: that the property owner or the applicant would have an opportunity to present further evidence based on concerns that may have been heard during deliberation, and also consider some design changes if that's something that the applicant is you know, feels is prudent on their part. But you know, I honestly, I think trying to get into the features that have given concern, I think the record's there. I mean, I have taken notes. I think that's clear, and it might be best. Or I would just suggest keeping a deferral motion just very simple.
Okay.
So moved.
Okay.
And second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? None? I'm in agreement with the deferral for the record. So we will defer this case for further information, and we know it's probably not the outcome you necessarily wanted, but I hope it's been somewhat helpful to you, and you know, we'd love to see it revisited in a future meeting.
Okay. Can I ask some sort of, I don't know what, procedural or clarification questions? I guess what I'm
Sure.
obviously
What's the
obviously
appropriate
disappointed,
mechanism, Raz, for?
and this can be off the record, or I don't know if that's even.
Just consulting with staff concerning when it will be reset. And if you have further evidence to present, making sure it is presented as soon as possible.
So questions about clarification of seemingly contradictory comments and confused looks from staff about those comments.
Staff is real good about trying to lend assistance when they can. So I'd say just call if you have questions in terms of what they view as expected of you. And just echoing Mr. Reese's comment that these are quasi-judicial cases, and it's responsibility of the applicant to make the case. And so the board is trying to communicate areas of concern, but they really can't steer you or direct you in terms of what they suggest you come back with, either in the way of new evidence or in the way of any possible design changes that you might think would improve your case.
Okay.
So that's about all I can say about that.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Grab that.
Yep.
Oh, sure.
And I know we only have 2 cases left, but I'm going to motion for a brief 5-minute recess, if that's okay. And I'm sorry to keep you all waiting, but I think we need just a very short break.
Yep.
Okay, we're back from recess. We're gonna pick back up with the fourth case this evening. It's COA 0131-2022, 1026 Dorothea Drive.
The easy case.
We hope so. At this time,
Should
I'll ask
be.
if any of our, if anyone reviewing this case has an interest in matter or otherwise feels they cannot be impartial to the case.
I know Judy, but we've not discussed this whatsoever.
I didn't talk about my replacement 5-foot fence with you.
So I feel I can be
Great.
appropriate in my judgment.
Applicant, if you'll state your name.
Judy Murray,
Okay. And you're the homeowner?
correct.
Okay. And do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
The whole truth, yes.
Okay, thank you. Is there a staff presentation for this?
There
Okay.
is.
All right.
This
All
time,
right.
staff will make a presentation.
This is case COA 131-2022 for 1026 Dorothea Drive in the Boylan Heights Historic District. The request is partial after the fact to remove a 5-foot rear wooden fence, that is the after the fact portion, and construct a new 5-foot rear wood fence. Next slide. This is a view of 1026 Dorothea from Dorothea Drive. It is located roughly at the start of a curve, which creates an atypical lot configuration in the back. Next slide. And a view of one side of the house toward the west. Next slide. And a view of the east with the driveway and existing rear fence that remains back there currently. Next slide. And a view of the rear facade. Next slide. And then a view toward sort of the property line exists about where that tree line is between the two houses. This is where the fence was removed and is roughly proposed to be reinstalled. Next slide. And staff concerns were just providing a full existing tree information for all trees on the lot or adjacent lots and a tree protection plan if needed. Were not provided. But I believe the applicant has new information.
Well, I did put on the site plan, I did put where the trees were on the lot, I thought.
That's yours? Sorry.
And, yeah, I made, so my arborist, okay, so I have two houses beside each other, one's blue, one's green, and it gets confusing with the addresses, so he didn't realize, anyway. In that letter, all the trees that he's referring to are on the 1028 property, which is the greenhouse. But the one in the back there is the one that's on the 1028 property that is the closest to the first post that will be this fence, which is where the fence was before.
So although, just to help clarify, although these trees are not necessarily located on the subject property, they are immediately adjacent to the work
Yeah.
zone with critical root zones
Yeah,
in the
so
area.
it got confusing because they're on another property, but they're right beside the fence in the house. And I just submitted an application to take those two trees down because they're like basically under the foundation. But I know that doesn't have anything to do with this.
Should disregard.
Yeah,
It's not part of your
disregard. Don't
review.
listen to me.
Is there any other evidence or materials you're presenting, or is this it? Okay. This time, I'm going to ask if there's anyone here wishing to speak in support of the application. Seeing none. I'm going to ask if there's anyone wishing to speak in opposition. I'm seeing there's none. And then finally, call on anyone who's wishing to ask questions or make general comments about the application.
I have a general question. Why does a major approval need to be for something that's just going back up exactly like it, not exactly like it was, but the same height and the same length? Why do you have to have a major approval on that?
I can address that as staff.
Okay. I was just curious, because I was like.
If there is a change in the exterior appearance, so
the
it's the
design?
same height, but we can't confirm the design is exactly matching. If it were the exact same, it would be considered no change in exterior
Okay.
appearance.
I mean, y'all approve so many things under the minor approval. I just thought, I was just surprised you couldn't approve something like that. That was,
Sure, and it's not the design that brings it to the committee, that change in design, but rather that it is over 42 inches in height, which is
gotcha.
an automatic major work application.
Yeah, I was just curious, because it just seems.
If I can add in, that has to do with a lot of wars between neighbors, that it got kicked above the staff level historically.
I gotcha. I gotcha. That's why I didn't think it'd be a problem, because it was, but I mean, yeah, I understand.
You're your own neighbor, yeah.
Yeah, I'm my own neighbor, yeah. But I understand, yeah.
You have a problem with yourself.
Yeah, somebody had a problem with it, so.
Any other questions?
No, thank you.
Okay. At this time, I'll allow fellow commissioners to ask questions of the applicant.
I don't have a question.
I have one because I always have questions.
Okay.
I'm curious why and maybe I'm missing some part of the application where I see where the trees are, but is there a reason why you wouldn't expand your fence to your property line?
I think it is on the property line, isn't it? It starts at the corner of the blue house, and it goes.
It kind of goes, makes like a straight line to the rear property line, but it seems like, I was just curious.
I thought it was on the. It's not on the property line between those two back there.
Not based on what's shown on the survey, so.
I think I was just putting it back where it was, and I don't like.
You're entitled to do that.
I don't know anything about that. I mean, like, that's just not something I didn't even have a survey until literally on the blue house 2.5 years ago, and on the greenhouse this year, like months ago. So I didn't even know where the property lines were. I've only honed them for 20 years. I mean, I don't know.
Now that you have a survey, you still probably don't know where they are because they're
right, exactly.
They're
I mean, they had so
lines.
much trouble; they couldn't even find them. So I just thought, well, I don't know. I just put it back where it was.
That's a reasonable answer. That's my only question. Okay. If there are no other questions, we'll close the evidentiary hearing portion so that we can have commission discussion.
From my point of view, it's going back to the place it was, the height it was, and the design is something that's been improved many times before. It's a no-brainer.
No issue.
Is that a motion, Curtis?
I can make it a motion. Let me get my prompt here. I move that based on the evidence presented during the hearing and in the application be approved with the following conditions. 1, that the new post holes be dug manually, and tree roots larger than 1-inch caliper that are encountered while digging shall receive a clean final cut using tools designed for the purpose, such as loppers. 2, that the following materials and specifications be submitted and approved by staff prior to issuance of blue placard. A, visual existing tree information, which we have, don't we? It's not visual. Okay, visual existing tree information, including species size, critical root zone locations of all regulated trees in the work area, and visual tree protection plan prepared by an ISA certified arborist or a landscape architect, including the location of protective fencing, site access, material laid down areas, and other protective measures as appropriate.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. Thanks for your patience while we
Yeah, that was
went
a
through
long
other
time.
cases. So,
That was a long time.
I'm acknowledging it was a long time, so thanks for your patience.
Yes.
And good luck
All
with your
right.
fence.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Okay, our next case and fifth case and final case of the night is COA dash 0135 rather dash 2022 603 Northeast Street. We've got a. Oh, sorry. First, I need to ask if anyone present, any of the commissioners or staff have a conflict of interest in this matter or otherwise cannot be impartial to this case. Hearing none. If the applicants will step towards the microphone and state your name.
Yeah, I'm Shay Stifelman.
Fiona Matthews.
Okay, thank you. If you'll, I need to swear you in. If you'll raise your hand. Do you solemnly swear to affirm that the testimony you're about to give is a matter of the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yep.
I do.
Okay, thank you. And at this time, staff will give a presentation about the Certificate of Appropriateness application.
All right, this is KCOA 135-2022 for 603 Northeast Street in the Oakwood Historic District. The request is to construct a 5'3" fence with a 7'1" arbor gate in the side yard. Next slide. This is an image of the front of the house, just a streetscape for context. Next slide. And another better view straight on. Next slide. This is a view of the side yard where that fence and gate are proposed to be constructed. Next slide. And a better view of the side yard down the side of the house to the rear of the lot. Next slide. And staff concerns are that a profile detail for the fence and arbor, including a depth dimension, were not provided, nor was the gate width specified. Also, full existing tree information and a tree protection plan were not provided.
Tree protection.
So, applicant, can you tell us about this additional evidence or any other statements you want to add above and beyond the staff presentation?
For sure, yeah. Staff concerns were noted. One of the details that we got was that the width of the fence and arbor design usually doesn't exceed 6 inches in the neighborhood, so that was good info to have to base our design off of. We're totally cool with that. That sounds awesome. Sweet, even. And the tree info, easy to gather. I like leaf and limb a lot, and we've worked with them in the past, and they were great to work with. Quite frankly, after we got the 6 inch number, I was just trying to fathom what that would look like over the last couple of weeks. And we actually recently found another arbor gate in the historic Oakwood district that has the designs that we're into that it's below 6 inches. We actually saw it earlier this evening, so we can provide that.
We have the photo of it currently. We just don't have it printed out yet, but it's at 102 Northeast Street at the corner of Northeast Street and Edenton. So in the example photo, of the two other fences that are on our block, there's one that's more of just like a plain lattice. So we would have just the arbor be that kind of wooden strip with the 1x1, 6 inches wide, 4 inches apart on the standard 102 Northeast Street fence that we've seen and is duplicated a lot in the neighborhood. And I think we would just be using like standard posts for the width of the rest of the fence, and it wouldn't exceed 6 inches at any point throughout the entire fence.
I believe that's all the additional info.
Oh, and the gate
right.
width as well would probably just be like,
I think it's a 4-foot gate is what we're planning on. I thought we had.
I think the depth width was going to be just like 1 inch, like just like a standard kind of 1 or 2 by.
Oh yeah, not a deep gate.
Not a deep gate.
Yeah, I may not have clarified that
Yeah.
well. For the gate width, we're just looking for the size of that opening.
Oh, the opening.
Yeah. I believe it's 4 feet is what we're planning on doing. I realize I didn't put that in the illustration, but I can add that.
Yeah, it looks like you had the heights, but maybe not the widths.
Maybe not the width.
Forgot to.
Sorry?
width the drawing.
Oh, yeah, and then I know there was one other concern about the metal finishings, but we are planning on using the black metal finishings that are standard in Oakwood, so that's no problem as well.
Match the rest of the house.
And also, we were really grateful for the COA because we found out that our house was built in 1923 and we thought it was built in 1930, which so we were like 7 extra years, 100-year anniversary next year.
We
So.
don't get to miss the anniversary.
Yeah, we don't get to miss the anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
Y'all are all invited.
Is there any other evidence to present or response at this time? Okay. So I'm hearing that we have some new information about color of finish, dimension of wood, and overall width of the gate. Move to close the evidentiary hearing, and move to commissioner discussion. Are there any?
I have no issues.
No brainer.
Yeah, I think as long as it looks like the other fences, which they said it will, it should be fine.
Can I make a motion?
You can.
Thank you. And what a joyous one to do. Bear with me. I gotta get my little piece of paper out here. Mr. Chairman, I move, based on the evidentiary hearing and the presentation we have seen this evening, as well as the submitted application, that we approve this application based on, with the following conditions. One, that any new post holes dug be dug manually and tree roots larger than 1-inch caliber that are encountered while digging shall receive a clean final cut using tools designed for the purpose, such as loppers. Two, that the arbor trellis not be wider than the fence top rail, and that the top rail not be wider than a piece of 2x6 dimensional lumber. Three, that the gate hardware be black metal material of simple design, which we have determined tonight. Four, that the following materials and specifications be submitted to staff for approval prior to issuance of the blue placard. Fence and arbor scaled section drawing detail, a visual existing tree information, including species, size, critical root zone locations of all regulated trees near the work area. C, visual trees protection plans prepared by an ISA certified arborist or landscape architect, including location of protective fencing, site access, material laydown areas, and other protective measures as appropriate. And 5, that the following materials and specifications be submitted to and approved by staff prior to installation or construction, that being A, fence gate hardware specifications.
Perfect.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? None? Passes unanimously. So, thank you for your patience and good luck with your project. And we appreciate you all hanging around to the end with us.
We had a great time.
Honestly, fascinating. Really
Awesome.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
You are a glutton for punishment.
Come back tomorrow morning, you'll see more.
You'll see, hey, there's more. See part 2. Bye-bye.
So Raz, there's no one here, but should I, for the record, repeat
For the record, you
okay.
just say this will be
Okay.
recessed and continued.
Okay. At this point, we're going to take a recess.
Before we do that, does that need to come prior to any additional discussion that the committee needs to have tonight? Is that essentially our adjournment, or do we continue and then we can have discussion?
We're recessing the evidentiary hearing portion. It doesn't make any difference as long as it's clear that the meeting, including the evidentiary hearings, are recessed and continue to recommence tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock at council chambers. So long as that pronouncement is made, it doesn't make any difference if it occurs now or when the entire meeting is over.
I would.
Your call.
Yeah, I would think that other business and the adjournment could be at the end of the meeting tomorrow, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would be fine.
Okay. So, is your statement of it is that adequate legally, or do we need to have chairman?
You can say what he said.
Make the announcement, because you are in charge.
We'll recess until 9 a.m. tomorrow morning and continue the cases, the evidentiary hearings, starting at COA.0117-2022-808 West South Street.
Thank all of you for coming.